Hi, I'm Hayley Victoria and welcome back to my crime and policing channel. In today's session, we are looking at roads policing and traffic. Woohoo! We are back on the roads, and that's because you've asked for it. So I do listen to you when you put comments in or asking the polls about what you want to look at. We've got lots coming up, which has already kind of been recorded, some that hasn't. Now, we have got a live stream coming soon with an operational traffic police officer. However, we're working on their shifts, my shifts, and a suitable time for us to record that. It'd be a bit weird if our shifts made that the only time we could record was like 3 a.m. in the morning, because I doubt many of you really want to watch that. I don't know who's up at 3 a.m. anymore. I'm certainly not. But a lot of people are generally in bed by about 3 a.m. We are looking at today the Fatal Four. You might have heard of this. Now, the Fatal Four are the most common causes for road deaths in the UK. And you'll see this everywhere on the internet. If you Google Fatal Four, it will pop up everywhere because it's widespread. And we really are trying to increase and educate awareness about this. Now, the four things that cause death the most on the roads are drink driving, drink and drug driving, speeding, driving while distracted, and not wearing a seatbelt. So these are our fatal four. Let's go through those again. Speeding, driving under the influence of drink or drugs, driving while distracted, and not wearing a seatbelt. That is the fatal four. Now, we are trying to educate people all over the UK with this. You'll see it with like the Safety Roads networks, on Charity Break. It's everywhere because making sure you are not doing those things, those four things, can save lives. And we're not just talking about you as a driver, we're talking about the people that you hit. So if you're driving while distracted, say you're messing about on your phone or something, or you're fiddling about with something, you're not like paying attention to where you're going or what you're doing, you're going to kill somebody. If you are not wearing your seatbelt, or you're not making sure people in your car under your responsibility under the age of 14 are wearing a seatbelt, you're going to kill somebody, maybe even yourself. If you are speeding, you are going to kill somebody. And if you are driving under the influence of drink or drugs, you are going to kill somebody. You might be lucky and you might not. But the risk of damage you could cause to somebody, being somebody else, yourself, property, is massive. And it really isn't worth the risk. There you go. And from speaking to a lot of people over the years who have committed offences in relation to this, it really isn't worth the risk. Okay, there you go. We are going to look at these fatal four then. Let's get cracking. Let's start with what might seem like the most easy one, but actually I don't think it is, because there's so much in relation to it, and that's looking at seatbelts. You might be like, what are you talking about, Hayley? It's just a case of clicking a seatbelt in and you're done. Oh no, it's not. There's so much that goes into seatbelts that you wouldn't even know. I have got a book that I consult all the time, and today it's not the Blackstone's Handbook for Policing Students. That is my go-to number one, as you know. And it is a Blackstone's book because I don't want to break tradition. It's Blackstone's Policing Manual, and we're looking specifically Volume 3, Roads Policing. Now, I don't get paid by Blackstones, or even, they don't even know who I am. I mean, come on, Blackstones, I talk about you all the time. I feel like a desperate, person who's like, notice me. Notice me, Blackstones, please send me some books. I generally just think Blackstones are amazing in terms of how they describe the law. They make it super user friendly, and yeah, I've been reading Blackstone's books for 10 years or something, and they're great. Anyway, that's my fangirl over. We're looking at seatbelts, and like I said, you might think this is easy. It's not. Right, so we're going to start by responsibility. Whose responsibility is it to make sure that seatbelts are being worn in a car? It's usually yours as the driver, usually. So if you're the driver and you've got a seatbelt fitted in your front seat, click, click, it's your responsibility to wear the seatbelt. Now, I said if fitted, and that's because if your vehicle was registered prior to, I think it's January, the 1st of January 1965, it doesn't necessarily have to have a seatbelt fitted. Anything after that must have a front seatbelt fitted. But things registered prior to the 1st of January 1965 might not have seatbelts fitted. You won't get many of those cars on the road today. We're looking at super classic cars, those beautiful cars that you see at these vintage car shows, all polished and beautiful. We're looking at those type of things. So anything pre 1st of January 1965 might not necessarily have these fitted. And to fit them now might damage the car because they are kind of like museum pieces now. So that's that. So if you are the driver, it's your responsibility to make sure you're wearing a seatbelt if fitted. There are some exemptions that we're going to go through in a little bit, but right now let's just focus on responsibilities for the average driver. If you have a child in your car and they are obviously under the age of 14, it's your responsibility to make sure that they are safely strapped in or they are safely restrained in your vehicle. There are allowances in relation to how their belts are. So if your child is under a certain height, they will need to have a car seat or a booster seat. And that's up to the age of 12 with the booster seats. However, if your child is above 135 centimetres, they won't need to have a booster seat because they're tall enough for the restraints to work properly with an adult seatbelt. My daughter's 11 and she's not got a booster seat because she's like, I don't know, 5 foot something. She's tall, so she doesn't need a booster seat anymore. You can go to like shops like Halfords and they will check your child's height and weight and recommend what kind of seats they need in a car. There are some exemptions in relation to car seats, which I'm going to go through as well with you in a second. So if the height is over 135 centimetres, they can wear a regular adult seatbelt. I'm putting my seatbelt on while I'm talking to you. So now if your child is above the age of 14, it's their responsibility to wear a seatbelt. Ooh. However, I think as a responsible parent, you should definitely make sure your child is wearing a seatbelt. There are other exemptions as well. So say you've got 3 children in the back of your car and you can't fit 3 seats in, then the middle seat doesn't necessarily have to, you've got to just use an adult restraint in the middle seat. You cannot fit 3 booster children's seats in the back of a vehicle. Not normally anyway. I've tried, it doesn't work. My dad, I'm telling you all my life story here, anyway, takes out all the grandkids and he has to put the bigger one in the middle with the seatbelt on. Just a regular adult seatbelt because he can't fit 3 children's seats in, and that's fine. There are other things as well. So say you're doing like a short trip, you're in a taxi, it's only occasional, then your child can wear a regular adult seatbelt because it's better than having nothing. Having that adult seatbelt on is better than having no restraint at all. So there you go. That's that one. There are also 2 different types of seats. When we're coming to looking at children's seats, you've got your height-based ones and your weight-based ones. Your height-based seats are also known as I seats, and they're rear-facing until the child is about 15 months old. And then the weight-based seats do depend on the weight of the child. These come in like different categories. So you've got 0, 0 plus, 1, and 2 and 3. Now, they are weight-based again, so it depends on the weight of the child on how the seat is positioned in the car. Like I said, if you are a person looking to buy one of these seats, on making sure that your child is safe, have a word with people in shops like Halfords and they will go through it all with you. They've got this really weird chair that you put your child on. It's like a pretend car seat and they measure everything. It's really technical, super helpful. So have a look at something like that if you are concerned. However, for us, we're going to look at the rules now. I don't expect you to know how much a baby or a child weighs as a regular person who's never held a child before, or indeed knows how much a child weighs in general. But there are some guidelines here. I'm not going to show you pictures of kids in their weights. That would be weird. If you are interested, have another look, do some Googling, because I appreciate I'm already 10 minutes in. So if your child's between 0 and 9 kilograms, they're in group 0. These are our small kids, our babies. They are like the lie flat lateral baby carriers, rear-facing baby carriers, or rear-facing baby seat using a harness. These are a clunk, 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 strap the baby in harness, okay? 0 to 13 kilograms are our 0 plus. And that's rear-facing baby carrier. And we're talking the word baby here that I've mentioned. So you're thinking of a baby, right? Or rear-facing baby seat, again, using the harness. These are babies that we've got in the car. 9 kilograms to 18 kilograms, that's group 1. Now, these are slightly different. These can have forward-facing baby seats using a harness or safety shield. So you might have seen them with little things up here, and they're all clunked in like this, and then they have the restraint over it. You can also get car seats fitted by specific garages. Again, I know I talk about Halfords a lot, so that's where I used to go. Halfords will help you fit things as well, if you're unsure. 15 kilograms to 36 kilograms is groups 2 and 3. And again, they're rear facing or forward facing, and they need to be strapped in with the correct harness and seat belts. Now, they might have the booster seat with a high back or a booster cushion. So have a look at those. But that's your groups 0, 0 plus, 1, 2 and 3, and they are weight based. So group 0 and 0 plus, you're looking at babies, okay? I know that, like, you might be thinking, yeah, really, I know what that is. However, if you've never seen or held a baby before, you don't really know how much they weigh, like, oh, it's a kid, innit? Think of babies, group 0, 0 plus, 1, 2 and 3, or like your little toddler efforts, okay? That's seatbelts so far. So I mentioned earlier that if your car was manufactured or registered prior to the 1st of January 1965, they might not be fitted with a seatbelt. There are some regulations in relation to this. We are looking at sections 46 and 47 of the Road Vehicles Regulations 1986. It's younger than me. Oh my gosh. Yeah, so it's younger than me, but it's still old. It's only just younger than me, by the way, so I'm not that old. Anyway, so like I said, cars manufactured or registered prior to the 1st of January 1965 may not be fitted with a seatbelt. And that's because, like I said, the classic cars, they weren't as safety conscious back in those days. So I remember like being in the 80s and 90s, and my granddad used to stick me in the boot when he used to, like, because he couldn't fit us all in. I'd just sit in the boot and I used to love it. But yeah, we're talking this kind of like sketchy times. I don't know if that wasn't legal. Oh well. Sorry, granddad. I just grassed you up to the internet. Okay, so moving on. Like I said, 1965, pre-1965, they will have not been fitted in cars. So like I said, after the 1965, you was to have a seatbelt in the front. We know that, right? What about the back? Well, like I said, it wasn't until the 80s they were fitted as standard. Cars manufactured after the 1st of October 1981 must have anchor points fitted for seatbelts in the rear. Cars manufactured after the 1st of October 1986 and registered after the 1st of April 1987 must be fitted with rear seatbelts. Now, the anchor points with some like requirements to choose the most appropriate size style of seatbelt for you and for your children. This is pre like these made baby seats and stuff like that. So yeah, after 1965, you have to have a front seatbelt fitted. 1981, you must have anchor points fitted in the rear of your car. 1987, after April, you must have seatbelts fitted in the rear of your car. Okay, are we good? We're on it so far. Now what we'll do is put all that together in relation to legislation. So I've discussed, haven't I, whose responsibility it is, when you must wear a seatbelt, and the kind of vehicles. If it's pre-1965, you might not have one fitted. So let's look at what the law says in relation to wearing seatbelts and where it sits under legislation. The offence is contravention of regulation in relation to seatbelts, the Road Traffic Act 1988, Section 14, subsection 3. Now, this is triable, summary, and the penalty will be a fine. Okay, so it's a summary offence. We are looking at not wearing a seatbelt. That's very, very professionally. Contravention of regulation relating to seatbelts, very hard to say, from the Road Traffic Act 1988, Section 14, subsection 3. Okay, right, what's that? It is simply like what we've just said. I've just broken it down before I've actually gone into the legislation. So let's read this out word for word from Blackstone's. I know you like to write these things down. So, a person who drives or rides in a motor vehicle in contravention of regulations under this section is guilty of an offence. But, notwithstanding any enactment or rule of law, no person other than the person actually committing the contravention is guilty of an offence by reason of the contravention. So in summary, like I said, the general rules are, if an adult is driving in the front of the car, they must wear a seatbelt if available. The responsibility on that adult is that adult if they have the mental capacity to make that decision. When travelling in the back seat of a car, an adult must wear a seatbelt. If the person is under the age of 14, it is the adult driver's responsibility to ensure they've got their seatbelt on. Otherwise, they are liable for the offence. In relation to children wearing seatbelts, this that's under the Motor Vehicles Regulations 1993. And like I said before, children must be restrained in a car. No children can be carried unrestrained in the front of any vehicle. And like I've mentioned in relation to responsibilities for who is putting the belt on, it's yours. We've looked at heights, we've looked at weights, and we've looked at potential exemptions to wearing the appropriate things, booster seats, whatever. So if it's, like I said, an occasional short trip, your child still must be restrained, but they can wear an adult seatbelt if they have to, and there's no other way for them to get where they need to go. Now, the Motor Vehicle Regulations 1993 also gives exemptions as to why people may not be wearing a seatbelt. So the person who's not wearing a seatbelt has a valid medical certificate. And they have to prove that as well. You can't just be like, oh, I don't need one, I'm medical. You've got to be like, okay, let's have a look then. And it's up to them to show you that. The person is driving a motor vehicle which is adapted or constructed for carrying goods, and they're not going any more than 50 metres, and they are carrying those goods. Okay, so not just razzing about on it up and down the motorway. They've got to be like in a suitable environment. The person is riding in an ambulance and they are doing something that they cannot do if they are wearing a seatbelt. So if you might see paramedics and stuff working on people in the back of an ambulance because they need that attention now on the way to hospital. And if they're not doing that work, that person might die. So they're not going to be sat there waiting, watching someone die on the way to hospital. So they'll have to be out of their seat. They can't be restrained. They have to be working on that patient because they've got to preserve life. Remember, that's a big priority in all the emergency services. They're trying to save someone's life. They don't need to wear a seatbelt. So don't chase them down on the way to hospital and be like, didn't have a seatbelt on, did you, mate? Because they're doing something really important. So yeah, that doesn't matter. A person driving while doing a manoeuvre such as reversing, so only while you're reversing, you might not have to have your seatbelt on if you're having to like do all this business. And if you are supervising a trainee driver doing that, so maybe you're an instructor, you also don't have to have your seatbelt on for that bit. However, after they've done the manoeuvre, you need to clunk clip and get on your way. Do you remember that, clunk clip? That was something from when I was younger. There you go. Okay, police and fire. So if you're a member of the fire service, or you are a police officer and you can't wear your seatbelt for work purposes, say you're conveying a prisoner to custody or something, and it's not safe to do so, you don't wear your seatbelt, otherwise you do. So it doesn't mean you just don't have to wear a seatbelt, it's if you've got a reason not to, okay? If someone is doing a test of competence on their driving and wearing a seatbelt would potentially cause them injury or somebody else, they don't have to wear one. That's very, very rare. You're not going to come across that very often. A taxi, so if someone's out looking in a proper taxi, they don't have to wear their seatbelts. And a person riding a vehicle, this is nice, while taking part in a procession organised by or for the Crown. I don't have the opportunity to do that. I would love to drive around in one of those beautiful cars in London, waving at people, but nobody would probably wave back. They'd be like, who's that? Yeah, so they are your exemptions. That's it for seatbelts. We've looked at a lot in this video, so you might be thinking, oh my God, I thought you just had to plug in your seatbelt and off you went. No, there's actually quite a lot to it. We've looked at responsibilities, we've looked at heights, weights, and all sorts of things. We've looked at exemptions, we've looked at the law surrounding all that. That is seatbelts, and that is part 1 of our Fatal 4.